Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Dr. Faraz Harsini. I'm the CEO of Allied Scholars, and we are very honored to have Ethan Brown today. But before we start, we want to show you a video that Beyond has produced, and it's very short. It's about 9 minutes, and I really love it. So we're going to watch that together and then start the interview with Ethan. So Benny, if you please show the video. Thanks.
Several times a day, we have a choice of what to put at the center of our plate. But what if something came along that gave you the chance to go beyond the status quo and truly choose for the future? By increasing plant-based food consumption, you are focused on the single most powerful tool our global society has to take control over our health, preserve our planet, and support the welfare of the rest of life on this beautiful earth.
You might have seen their ads, in fact, on our air even, the group launching a full-fledged campaign.
Beyond Meat is under attack.
Are you getting funding from publicly traded meat companies? I mean, who's backing you now?
We don't publicly disclose our donors.
The meat lobby wants to make plant-based meat less attractive to consumers. They're afraid their industry is going to be disrupted.
The whole quest around Beyond Meat is to build a perfect piece of meat. And it wasn't to try to build a meat alternative, it was to try to build meat directly from plants. Our ethos is relentless improvement. And when it comes to health, we work most closely with Stanford School of Medicine. They were showing the quantifiable outcomes you can get from changing the protein center plate from animal to plants. Just in 8 weeks, we were lowering cardiovascular risk factors.
Today I'm going to share with you a study done at Stanford University that actually put Beyond Meat to the test. TMAO was significantly lower compared to the animal meat condition. LDL cholesterol was also significantly lower in the Beyond Meat.
I'm super excited to bring you the Beyond Meat burger. I think this could be the future of meat.
It's really good, like, wow.
In 2020, more than 50% of the population felt that plant-based meat was good for their health. By 2022, that number was down about 38%.
The American beef producers are following a very similar playbook to the tobacco industry of undermining science and of creating counter-narratives that suggest that plant-based products are somehow harmful. Their concern is that plant-based meats will begin to eat into their sales and harm their profits.
Whenever there's been dramatic change, there's always been incumbents that are going to resist it. It's predictable. The meat industry is one of the most established industries in the world. There's no surprise that they're going to want to protect the status quo.
We faced a fundamental choice, and that was to either bang our fists on the table and exclaim the health benefits of our products, or to take a look inward and say, how do we make our products even healthier? How do we make them unassailable from a health perspective? We worked with leading medical and nutrition experts and spent years designing this latest product generation, Beyond 4.
One of the underappreciated aspects of plant-based meat alternatives is that we can reformulate them. You can't do that with a cow.
The new formulation of the Beyond Burger really impressed us in our evaluation.
They're now putting in heart-healthy avocado oil. It has a simple list of ingredients. It's 21 grams of protein.
Their protein sources are extremely healthful food. Peas, lentils, brown rice, faba beans. When you cook meat, as soon as you get heat combined with the creatinine in meat, it equals highly carcinogenic compounds forming. When you grill, saute, or barbecue a Beyond Meat burger, you're not making any appreciable carcinogens.
It's about 2/3 of 12 to 14-year-olds in the US have very early signs of cholesterol disease.
Replacing a saturated fat with an unsaturated fat. There's an obvious blood cholesterol benefit.
Cardiovascular disease is the thing that kills most people in the US and the UK. And one of the big challenges is getting the public down to healthier levels.
Beyond Meat plays a pivotal role in helping people make healthy lifestyle changes. In really good faith, I can recommend to patients, when you have that craving for burgers, go eat the Beyond Meat.
So the process starts at the farm. And I'll explain this in the context of our steak. So our steak uses fava bean as a protein. The farmer plants the crop. The crop is harvested. Then it's milled. The flour is placed in an air chamber, and because the density and size of protein and starch are different, they naturally separate. We then take the protein, blend it with wheat, and we run it through heating, cooling, and pressure to restructure the form of that protein into animal muscle. We then mix in natural flavors, we mix in natural colors from carrots and apples. We add in oil. That's the process behind Beyond Steak.
That's the moneymaker right there, them nodules, right? That's why we're doing it. I'm not a food scientist and I'm not a food innovator, but I do know that having red lentils on this farm has made a big difference for me. And I know that they've made a big difference for agriculture in general across Montana and the Northern Plains. These pulse crops, yellow peas, red lentils, are extremely friendly to the environment. We don't have to use the synthetic fertilizer that we often use in other crops, and they don't need as much water.
It's about creating more opportunity for the farmers. We saw less wind erosion. We saw nitrogen fertilizer back into the soil. It's created a better opportunity for the whole region.
The return on investment has been probably 25% higher than any of the other crops that we would replace it with.
The introduction of pulse crops has actually encouraged some younger folks to come back. They saw that I can make it. I can start a family and be a farmer.
In 1971, Frances LePay published a book called Diet for a Small Planet. And the argument she was making was that by getting your proteins and your energy directly from plants versus running all that plant material through an animal, you can dramatically shrink the agricultural footprint, and you can size the agricultural footprint in a way that allows the rest of life on Earth to live.
What we've done over a really long period of time is that we've basically turned a lot of the world into a large farm.
Something like 3/4 of the world's agricultural land is for livestock products.
That didn't used to be there. That used to be wild habitats.
Through history, everything is marshaled towards the idea of replacing those wild lands with farming and livestock raising empire. Wiping out all the bison, all the wolves, coyotes, obliterating them.
Cattle not only use a huge amount of land, they produce a great deal of methane. And methane is a particularly potent greenhouse gas. For us to solve climate change, beef consumers have to consume less. Not none, but less. Of course, one opportunity to do that is to persuade people there's an alternative.
We use significantly less land, significantly less water, and have far fewer greenhouse gas emissions than the animal protein equivalent. Focus on that one statistic for one moment. The current Beyond Burger uses 97% less land. What that does is it frees up an enormous amount of land to be able to put that land back into nature. And in that process, you're taking carbon out of the atmosphere and you're storing it in those ecosystems.
One of the really cool opportunities, I think, for cattle ranchers is, get them to change their mindset from being livestock producers to carbon ranchers.
Farming families should be embraced as among the strongest fabric of our communities, including those families in animal agriculture. We should be paying farmers, redirecting subsidies to not only grow food, but to become stewards of climate.
Plenty of places in the world, farmers have been paid to restore their farms to some kind of habitat.
We've done this throughout history. If you look at world wars where we repurposed industries to fight battles, we have a battle and it's a climate battle. Let's use them to fight it.
If the world was to shift to a plant-based diet, we could feed everyone on 1 billion hectares.
And if enough of us do that, then we'll stop converting land altogether and we'll be able to save the Amazon. And if we go even beyond that, we can then restore forests and other natural landscapes.
With really ambitious action, natural carbon sequestration could play a really crucial and really large role in us meeting our climate targets.
If I can leave you with one thing, it is this. You fearlessly confront the questions of our time and refuse to go numb in defeat. There is truly hope and a path forward in eating closer to the sun. There is personal bodily health. There is a future for our planet and the miracle of life we share it with. And there's kindness. So let's go get it.
All right. So we have Ethan here already. So just a very quick intro. First of all, thank you for being patient with moving the meeting a few times. We are here. Quick intro about ASAP. If you just joined, we are building the very first infrastructure for advocating for animals, the food system, and the environment in universities. And I think that to change the food system, really the best place to start is just universities where we have the next generation of thought leaders being educated. And that's where lots of current influential vegans came from. And so what we are trying to do is to bring this education to all college campuses. So without further ado, Ethan, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I wanted to just commend you and thank you for the really terrific concept here, the work, and it is an enormous and a battle that predates us and will also be one that our subsequent generations continue to fight. So appreciate everything you're doing and look forward to talking with you guys.
Absolutely. I would just say that the thank goes to all the students who are doing the hard work. All I'm doing is to give them a platform and education and mentorship, but you guys, you students, you're literally the future. So I hope that you find this inspiring. So let's just get started. I know based on my calculation, I think you became vegetarian in high school and then later, I think for 20 years, you've been vegan, 17 to 20 years. I'm curious, what got you interested in becoming vegetarian that early on and then eventually going vegan about 17, 20 years ago?
Great. No, thank you for asking. And so, I think I started to really think about food as an ethical issue when I was in high school, and maybe even actually before, sort of in the 7th or 8th grade. And the issue that I was having is probably, this will resonate, I think, with a lot of folks here, so it's nothing particularly unique to me. But we have a farm, and if I won't bother screwing up the screen right now, but on the other side of the room is a picture of the sign from that farm. It's Savage River Farms. And my father's a professor, and at the time when I was growing up, he was at the University of Maryland, and he had the weekends and then summertime where he didn't have to be in a office or in the city. And his dream was really to be on our farm, and he grew up in a rural context and wanted to return to that. And so I spent a lot of time on our farm, and we had dairy cows there. And we had about 100 head of Holstein cows. As part of that experience and just being outside all the time in rural areas, but having a perspective from the city, I was on the farm, but not necessarily of the farm. And so I think the kind of questions that are profound but very simple, the things that you hear in Charlotte's Web and all these things were the kind of questions I was asking, these fairness questions, right? And particularly around why some animals are treated some ways and others in other ways. And I didn't have a framework for why I was asking that. I simply had an emotion and a sense of other beings in the world. And so I sort of put that away and would make decisions as I got older around, well, I'm not going to eat this kind of animal or that kind of animal, but there wasn't much coherence to it. I still wore leather and things of that nature. And when I finally sort of put it all together, I realized that you just can't use another being for your own ends in any way that fits a normative framework. And I think the person, the one thinker that really put a intellectual framework around what was an emotional connection for me was Albert Schweitzer. Albert Schweitzer was won the 1952 Nobel Peace Prize, and he was a theologian and a doctor who had left a very comfortable life in Europe to go and treat malaria and other diseases in the Congo, in that area. And he had a vision that came to him, which he articulated as reverence for life. And in that vision, he came up with a framework that said, while you can use one being for your own ends, there's no narrative that really supports that other than might is right. You have to acknowledge that it's arbitrary. So if I, take one animal's life so I can eat the animal, then it's an arbitrary exercise of power. There's no sort of other framework that suggests that is okay. And that really stuck with me. And so that's when I became fully vegan, and I've been vegan for over 20 years now.
That's really awesome. Did your dog have something to do with?
He did, yeah, he did, Tahoma. Yes, and it's the same concept. And again, this is what's so interesting to me is that as children we understand this intuitively, and then we kind of have it, beat out of us as we go through the institutions that think otherwise. And so, yes, I did. I had tons of animals when I was a child. I had on the farm. I would. This is unfortunate, but I would collect everything that I could find. So I had, newts and salamanders and turtles and anything I could catch, I would. So I was really drawn to them. But my dog in particular, and that was really the thing that many people say now. But I definitely had. I didn't understand why one animal in the barn was hauled off to slaughter and the other was pampered and taken to the vet. That just never made sense to me. But I will tell you this, that there's another set of literature that really did help, and as students, I hope you'll give this a shot. There's a book called Created from Animals, and it is ethics according to kind of Darwin, right? And it was written by a philosophy professor who was at the University of Alabama, of all places, and he really puts forward something that is hard to refute. The argument is that Darwin realized that there's no distinct break between species, that it is a basic continuum of life forms. So there's some life forms that maybe are intelligent in one way and not in another, and there's some that can jump higher than others. There's some that have longer lifespans than others, but everything is from the same blueprint of life, and that's actually true across plants and animals. The basic structure of plants and animals is similar. So if you think of a leaf and you think of a feather, it's absolutely beautiful to contemplate for a minute. They have the same bilateral symmetry. It means they're same on one side as they are on the other, largely. And that's the blueprint of life, and that's DNA, which both plants and animals have. And so what Darwin was saying was we didn't descend from the heavens in the image of God. We ascended from mud in the structure of animals. And once you realize that, you realize you're looking at yourself when you look at an animal. And so I think as a child we see that, and then as an adult we're taught to think otherwise.
Absolutely. I think we get conditioned in society and brainwashed to look at some animals as objects and commodities and slaves. And one thing I really liked, you were giving a talk and you said, there is no reason for us to use, someone else's body. And then you said someone, not something. Yep. And I think that sometimes I have to have long discussions with students on campus. They're like, how do we know animals feel pain? I'm like, are you kidding me? That's a level of, I think, cognitive dissonance. And I'm like, I have to make it real. I'm like, if I was beating a dog in front of you, you would take action. You're not going to say, I'm not sure if that dog, feels pain. And that's one other reason we do one of the events that we like to do is we pretend we sell dog meat and people lose their shit. And then we, the whole idea is to get over that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I think one important question that I wanted to ask you is that in our line of work, we face a lot of pushback. So every vegan does get a lot of pushback alone, and then you are a CEO of a plant-based company, so for you it's even more. So just this week later, for Thanksgiving, 40, 50, 60 million turkeys have to be killed, literally tortured to death. And then, every vegan probably can resonate with this. You're going to be at this Thanksgiving dinner. And if you say anything, if you point out any issue here, or even if you just refuse to be at the table, then people are going to call you like extreme, annoying, pushy, judgmental. So you get a lot of pushback as vegans. And then for you, it's like financial articles and then meat industries after you. And you probably get pushback from also vegans. So my question is, how do you deal with pushback? And when you feel isolated and alone, what is it that really guides you through hard times?
Oh, what a wonderful question. And I got a lot to say on that. First of all, I have TK who's here with us, so you can never feel alone in this fight if you got TK on your side, because he's such a smart person and so committed to this. And so part of it is surrounding yourselves with people who see what's going on. And as a vegan at Thanksgiving, I would say it's okay to be outraged. And it's okay to not partake, and it's okay to voice your opinion. I'm certain of this, and it's not popular, but that's okay. Benjamin Lay is a guy who I'm Quaker, and I was raised Quaker, and I find him to be fascinating. He was like a very small man. He was kind of hunched over. He was friends with Benjamin Franklin and all these guys in Philadelphia. He lived in a cave, and he had a bunch of books in a cave. Very literate, but he was exposed to slavery in Barbados and I think Jamaica possibly, if I have that right. And sugar was a big one of the impetus for slavery, and they couldn't get the indentured whites to work as hard because the indentured whites had a sense of rights. So when they brought the Africans over, they really just were even more horrific, right? He saw that, and then he went up to Philadelphia, and he would go to Quaker meetings, and Quakers are a group that's ostensibly nonviolent. They'd see all the meat eating and the slave holding, and he would do outrageous things to try to get them to realize how hypocritical this was. He was not, he's banned. He was banned. Him and his wife were banned from many Quaker meetings because of this. But he's gone down in history as an abolitionist. And, TK remembers this. I was using the word abolition in a speech that I was giving here, and someone said, well, it's kind of offensive. It's not offensive at all. I mean, this is slavery. It's slavery of a certain type of being. Like, it just is, right? And so you should use those words. And the reason that Benjamin Lay was kicked out of these meetings and ostracized was because he was calling attention to a very uncomfortable fact for these people that otherwise believed themselves to be peaceful people, was that they were holding slaves, and it was wrong, right? And so when you go to Thanksgiving dinner and you say, oh my God, this animal is a being, and this animal has a family life that they would like to pursue, and a sense of emotion, and it may be different from yours, but it's present, and you're treating this animal like a being, like an object. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it just in the same way that those Quakers in Philadelphia didn't want to talk about the fact they owned slaves. Keep talking to them about it. Keep being annoying. Maybe they get banished from Thanksgiving. That's great. You can go watch the game. Don't worry about it.
100% agreed. I didn't actually know your position on this, but I 100% agree. I think that whatever you do, just don't be silent. There are a lot of things that people can do. You can always politely refuse and send a very strong signal and just say, hey, I would love to have your company. I would love to hang out with you guys. What if I actually come after the dinner? Because every time I sit down and I see the dead body of tortured animals, I honestly can't even enjoy your company just because I remember the last moments of those animals. And you can always say things politely but firmly. And please don't bend under pressure in this society. You recently gave a talk at Stanford Food Summit, and I want to quote you on something that you said I really liked, which ties to the question I want to ask next. You said that the machine, referring to animal ag, will continue to get you to think that our process of condensing protein is somehow processed while factory farm meat is not. My one and only request to each of you is to think for yourself. Don't blindly follow what Instagram and media is telling you. It's being orchestrated. So to me, I see a lot of similarities between the PR campaign by Animal Ag and tobacco industry in the past. But I would like to see what similarities you see between their PR tactics and sort of propaganda machine.
Yeah, that's the thing I think would be best to focus on for a minute. So I did something called the AMA today, which was a Ask Me Anything program on Reddit with investors. And it was a group that was sort of a mission-oriented. And mission-oriented in this sense that, a lot of these Reddit investors are folks that see that something is wrong with the financial institutions that are running Wall Street, and they're small investors, and they want to basically, beat that system, right? And so they come together as a group and try to take, collective action to do that. And they take stocks like mine that are heavily shorted, and they try to basically, what they say, punish the shorts, right? And so there's a David versus Goliath component to that, and we certainly, all of us here, are David and versus Goliath. And so in speaking to them, I asked a question. I said, why would a public company CEO of a pharmaceutical company care at all about Beyond Meat? Why would they want to call us processed, fake, full of chemicals? What's the reason for that? And the reason for that is that they make a huge amount of money selling drugs to factory farms to drug up animals, right? That's why they don't want us to succeed. So the people that are spreading the misinformation, spreading the narrative, are the very people that are making the food that reaches the center of their plate for most of the United States highly processed and full of dangerous things, right? So you have to understand where all this is coming from. If you look at the Buddhist monks, if you look at Kellogg back in the 1890s in Battle Creek, they were doing these things a long time ago, converting plant material into a meat-like structure. There was no discussion of it being processed or what have you. This is a trumped-up campaign, no pun intended, that is designed to dismantle the type of growth that we were seeing, and it worked. And so our job, and we talk about parallels to the tobacco industry, what folks who were very bright who were working on that problem realized was that the normal consumer does not like to be misled by big corporate interests, right? And so they started the Truth Campaign. The Truth Campaign mocked all these, kind of pasty white, inside the beltway lobbyists that were creating the narrative that was trying to get kids to continue to smoke. So they mocked them, and it worked. And people started to realize that, that they were being sold a bill of goods. And so that's what we have to do. We have to expose what's going on and why people are being told these things. And if we can do that, then I think people can begin to think for themselves. That's all we ask. You don't have to buy the product, but at least read the back of the label. At least read that the American Heart Association is behind us, the American Diabetes Association is behind us, the Clean Label Project is behind us, doctors, nutritionists, and dietitians are behind us. They're not the same ones that are going down to Boca Raton and getting paid and coming back up with messaging. They're not the institutions that are being funded by the Pork Processing Board, by the Cattlemen's Association, but they are people who are involved in medicine and health, and they are getting behind what we're doing. Just listen. And if you disagree, fine, but at least please think for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, in your promo video, I saw Matthew Nagra, which I think is one of the most evidence-based doctors. So, very good choice. So clearly, vegans are in minority. People who care about perhaps climate, etc. We are in minority. We don't have as much money and resources as animal ag. How should we fight back with our limited resources? What's the best way to fight back when it's like a disadvantage situation?
Thank you. So I think this is really, it's twofold. One is, let's start within our own community. So there are a lot of folks in the vegan community. I'm very much squarely in the center of that, in the sense of, my motivation for this company was first and foremost to try to right a wrong, right? So I get that. But there are many within the vegan community that it didn't help because they said, it's processed, I'll just have beans, right? Okay, that's fine if that's what you want to do. I eat a ton of beans, I eat a ton of quinoa and all these other things. But, I was just in rural Oregon, and it reminded me of when I was in Germany recently at one of the largest trade shows. Germany's the best vegan market there is, by the way. But the emphasis on meat was just overwhelming in both locations. I mean, overwhelming. Like, we are so far from having people consume, beans and rice all the time, right? I mean, we're just not going to get there in a time that's going to be relevant for the animals that need our help and for climate and all these other things. So we have to do something different. And so, as vegans, we should not criticize plant-based meat, right? That's the first thing. I think second is to understand the process so that you can articulate why it's so crazy that people are saying it's processed. And so here, I'll just explain it very quickly. I did explain it in Planting Change, but just to break it down into even simpler points, what we're doing is we're taking that protein, and it's actually, to me, it's like, it's even more fascinating what we described in the movie. There's in the inside of an animal, in the rumen, there's I think the fourth stomach, there's a process going on where non-protein nitrogen is being converted into amino acids and protein. And that's what forms the muscle and all that's done. We harvest to kill the animal, take the muscle, and eat it as meat. And then in a plant, in the nodule that we were talking about, there's the nitrogen coming in from the air that's turning into amino acids and protein. So both processes are actually the same. But instead of running all that plant material through the animal, we're simply taking it out and using a piece of equipment that's the same that's used for pasta. And we're forming meat structure out of that. That's kind of it. It's really not difficult. It's taking an existing piece of equipment used for pasta and taking flour, right? Like, so you mill a plant, you create the flour, then you separate the protein and starch and air, and then you put that protein in the machine that makes pasta, and you just use that machine differently, and then all of a sudden you have a piece of meat, right? That's what we do. It's a better process. Hands down, it is a better process. I'm sure you're aware of the ice analogy. To me, that's like, I wish I'd come up with it. It's like the most brilliant thing I've heard in a long time. So 1851, there's a guy named Frederick Tudor. He's the kind of industry leader of the natural ice industry in Boston. And all throughout New England, they're cutting ice from the lakes, and they're sending it down, actually as far as India. They put sawdust on it and put it on the hull of a boat. But they're also sending down South America, to the southern part of the United States. And someone in Florida is tinkering around and creates a mechanized ice machine. And he's a doctor who's treating yellow fever, and he's a coolest clinic. And so he does that and starts to grow a business where he's making ice by machine, not by cutting out of ice. Frederick Tudor organizes an industry association, goes out and creates a false narrative, which is that this mechanized ice is contaminated, it kills the industry, the entrepreneur dies. What happened, though, was the Civil War occurs, the blockade, where you can't get the ice down to the South anymore. So someone in Louisiana starts to use the same type of equipment and ultimately commercializes ice, and it's over. It turned out there was contamination. It was in the ice from the rivers, because the rivers were industrialized and dirty. And so we're having the same thing go on here, where our process is super clean. It's very simple, but by the people who are using antibiotics, hormones, factory farms, all these other things, they're calling it process. So it is Orwellian in its nature, and it just becoming educated about that is a huge way to help us.
Okay, so short answer is basically education. I don't think with our crowd and our students should be worried about not promoting like plant-based meat. I do go to some conferences where there are like lots of whole food plant-based doctors, and sometimes I get it, they're against like, processed meat. And I'm like, the day we decided to have burger, we are not eating healthy. It's literally meant for replacing animal-based meat. And as your studies like SWAP showed, it's still a beneficial choice for health. And that was the old Beyond, not even the new one with better nutrition profile. So another question I have is, like smoking in my parents' generation, smoking used to be very cool, and now it's not. But eating meat is still like a cool thing. It's a macho, manly thing that people still do. And I know that a lot of your pitch is around, animals and climate, things like that. How do you pitch Beyond Meat or eating plant-based to, let's say, conservatives and hunters and people who don't necessarily care about climate?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a really relevant question for now, because those topics are off the table right now. Like climate, you can't, nobody's seen, and it's amazing. And the thing about leadership is so incredible to me, that because the president doesn't care, it's not just policy that's being affected. Consumers don't. They're sort of off their agenda right now. And so we've got to be really vocal. And we're losing a lot of time on climate. I don't know if you guys saw this thing recently where bears are starting to come down into urban areas because the nuts are changing and they can't get, because the climate has changed so much, they can't get their normal sustenance. So they're coming, there's more and more interactions now between human. I mean, the moose up in New England are dying from being bled to death because the ticks aren't being killed off in the frost. So it's just, there's so many horrible things that are going on that are year by year we've got to fix and hurry up and do it. But I think for the conservative and for the hunter, it's all about human health. And so I have a friend who's a big Trump supporter. His daughter and my son grew up together, and they're very close friends. And I noticed that he likes our product because he's concerned about his cholesterol levels. So it's all about that. And it's the only way to reach a broader audience right now.
Yeah, promoting health. That makes sense. So speaking of that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just the economics. Something is happening that's on our side, which is the price of beef is rising a lot. So it's supposed to hit $10 next year, which is a big deal for us. So that could be very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of health, I know that you work with lots of nutrition scientists and doctors, and I know you talked about subsidies, that if subsidies change and supported like plant-based foods, that would be a game changer. And you're an entrepreneur yourself. You went to Columbia, you have MBA. So there are so many ways to tackle the food system. And I know that literally, virtually every single student from ASAP on this call is thinking about how they can contribute to this transformation in the best way possible. So with the goal of animal liberation and really changing the food system, what are some of the best career options that you would recommend to students? So if you met maybe young Ethan Brown, what would you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think one thing that we talk about a lot here, TK and myself and others, is the notion of just broadening the dialogue around protein. And getting people to think about protein differently. And so if you start to think about protein and protein intake, I think it's about 25% of protein consumed in the United States is consumed outside of the center of the plate. And so that's a big, big number. So there are a lot of things that you can take advantage of there. People are having yogurts and they're having, bars and drinks and things like that. And so there's a lot of places you can go into the food system that aren't necessarily plant-based meat and have an impact. But there's still, this is if you think about the automotive industry, if you think about the solar industry, these things take a long time. So certainly we're just at the very beginning. So I would get into food. I would get into using your brain power if you're a scientist, to work on these issues. If you were a marketer, to work on these issues. We still obviously have not cracked the code. It looked like we had about 7 or 8 years ago. We basically took the formula from the Got Milk campaign and applied it to our products, hired athletes and did all these things that started to work. But we got into a lot of headwinds when the meat industry kind of woke up and started to counter market. So there's just so much need in this particular space. And then even at the seed level, if you start to think about protein, how do you breed higher protein legumes and pulses and things of that nature? And then the master narrative. I mean, if you're interested in theology, I mean, even that, everywhere we need to attack this issue, right? And so I'm very interested in theology. My grandfather was a congregational minister, and that there's a guy who I find very interesting at Oxford, who is the head of the animal welfare center there or something of that nature. And his argument is that rights for animals is an important discussion, but it's really theo rights, which is a lot of our misuse of animals comes from a misunderstanding that we are somehow special before God. And so there's so many angles you can attack this, right? If you see at the root, there's this terrific quote, Mad Men and Scribblers, that we think we're acting in rational ways, but it's really, we're just sort of reliving the formulas and academic thinking of people who came before us, or religious thinking. And so examine everything you're being told and try to make an understanding for yourself as to whether it makes sense. So attack it from all angles.
100% agreed. Yes. And I think the most important thing is to follow what you're extremely passionate about and you think that it's going to work. And if you don't have the answer right now, is totally fine. I imagine that Ethan Brown didn't have the idea of Beyond when he was in college, right?
But no, it actually had a different idea. I wanted to create like a plant-based McDonald's when I was in my 20s. And I did, I went into it and I saw, I was involved in a restaurant, I was just on the side, and I saw that the products weren't yet good enough. So that's really what got me to this. But I think it's a big continuum. I mean, I think someday, these lab-grown meat and things like that could play a role. I think there's so many angles to take, and you should take the one you're most passionate about.
Exactly. So the one of the other questions I wanted to ask is, what is it like to run Beyond as a CEO? Because I remember talking to you in that same office. I think it was like Christmas Eve. It was either last year or 2 years ago. But it just shows how much you work, and there's really just sometimes a culture, especially in nonprofit, a culture of 8 to 5 jobs. And I know that you don't treat your job as like an 8 to 5 job. It's like your life, because your mission is not beyond. Your mission is to change the food system. So what is it like to build something like Beyond Meat as a CEO?
It's a privilege. It's a privilege. I'm very blessed to be here and to be able to work here and to have people like TK and others around me. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's hard as hell. I mean, it's not, but people talk about like disruption and things like that. And like, and they're like saying, oh, well, such and such app disrupts such and such. I'm like, you guys have no idea. It's like when you go against an industry the size we're going against, it is brutal, right? And I mean, I someday we'll write a book about this or something, but the things that they'll do to make it difficult and the challenges you run into are extraordinary. And so you have to just be so focused on the broader outcome. It's like a battle. You just have to. We always talk about surviving and advancing. You have to survive and advance. And the analogies aren't really business analogies anymore. At some point, they're more movement analogies, and unfortunately they're sort of warfare analogies. How do you sustain a level of energy for many, many years when there's a lot going wrong in terms of the consumer is not looking at this stuff right now. Their head is elsewhere. The government certainly isn't. We're getting sued in various places for the use of the word meat and things like that nature. I mean, there's just a lot of headwinds, and so you have to take a long view. And I think about where is this business going to be 15, 20 years from now, and that kind of allows me to keep on track.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that your job is extremely difficult with all the pushback that you get from literally everything. But in one sentence, like when you close the door and leave, and you had a very terrible day, and it feels like nothing is going as it should, what is that thing inside your heart that guides you?
Oh, it's absolutely the sense that this is the right thing to be doing, and also a sense of optimism. Like I know that ultimately we will prevail. I'm absolutely certain of that. And I can't predict the scale in terms of, but this can't continue, and that's obvious. And we're seeing it. You're seeing the disease outbreaks that are challenging the animal agriculture system, the pricing, the droughts. It's happening, and so it will happen. So you got to just stay hopeful, and I am hopeful.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to open it to students to ask questions. One comment I just wanted to make is that oftentimes when we talk about vegan advocacy, and I keep saying that it's not just about getting one person not buying animal products, it's about motivating someone who could be like Ethan Brown. And I want every single of you, especially the students, to see yourself in Ethan. And every person who replaces a red meat burger with Beyond Burger and is reducing animal consumption is a positive. But even more important than that is when you inspire someone else to not just be vegan, but you've heard me saying that so many times, that the goal is not to make someone become vegan, but to become an influential vegan who speaks up and uses every second of every day to fight for animal liberation. So I think Ethan is a great example of that. So I hope that you can see.
As are you. As are you.
Yeah, thank you. With that, I want to open it to students. If you are a ASAP chapter lead, feel free to collect questions from your classroom and your other members. And for everyone else, we're going to open the chat. If you can please put your questions in the chat, and then Benny will pick a few. I saw Ryan's hand up. Can we let him unmute, please? I can do that. All right. Ryan, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Super inspirational words. In the video, there was even a brief mention about like past wars and like rebuilding after wars and how we have to like rebuild our food system. And I haven't thought about it that way, so that was really neat. One question I had is regards to, I think there's been like a increased distrust in the American public in institutions, especially since around COVID. So you mentioned getting endorsements from American Heart Association and other groups when so much of your market from consumer trust is around health, and there's an increase in distrust among institutions. How has that impacted your work, your sales, and what are like good ways to combat that in the future?
That's great. Absolutely great question. My sister went to Madison, and it was a great spot. Great spot. There's a great professor there who wrote Changes in the Land. I don't know if he's still there, but so it's a big problem. I mean, it's people, there's a pay to play element to a lot of institutions, and people see through that. So I think you just got to be careful. I think everything for me is about the movement and how to get the movement to be vocal about this. It's much more powerful than an institution. And I think we're just getting into that phase now where there was so much negative content being thrown at the category. And it was sort of, there was a immersion in negativity. And I think now we're coming out of that. And so for the movement itself to become ambassadors for what we're trying to do is critical, because it's more powerful than an institution. People ask me, what can the government do? And I say, sure, fine, give us subsidies. They won't do it. They will never do that. But we don't need it. It's between us and the consumer. And what I really want is the consumer to help us do this by, sharing the products, by sharing the messaging, by combating some of the negative information out there. And so, to me, it's the individual voice that's more important than the consumer. More important than the organization. Yeah. Because you're right, they've lost credibility. I mean, they really have. It's a pay to play. Everything right now. I mean, look at how our White House is behaving. I mean, everything right now is up for sale. And so it comes down to the consumer and how we're going to behave together as a collective community.
All right, so
I asked you to unmute if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. That was fantastic and really informative. I'm a huge fan of the plant-based meats, and especially Beyond. I think the first time I had a Beyond burger, it was labeled as a veggie burger on the menu, and I just spat it out when I tried it. I was like, "Oh no, you gave me the real burger. It doesn't taste anything like brown rice and carrots." But I've sort of been wondering since then. And I tried like the sausages with the new recipe are just fantastic. I wonder if I've been wondering actually if they've gotten to a point where they're so good that it's now like maybe they've done what they can do. Like obviously we still have this marketing war to fight, but I wonder if I mean maybe it's just my lack of imagination, but it's hard for like it's clear that they're better, so much better on emissions. It's clear that they're better on health. I think they're like, I mean, pretty equivalent on taste. So what do you see as like the future of Beyond? Do you see yourself just as continuing to exist as an option, or is there a way to more aggressively start like grabbing more of the market share?
These are terrific questions. So what's interesting, and people, we don't discuss this necessarily that much publicly, but we did a bunch of, we always do taste tests. We call them CLT, centralized location testing, and there's like hundreds of people do it. And it was interesting. I think I can't remember which iteration it was. I think it might have been beyond 3. It tested at parity, so the same what they call like preference as the 80/20 beef burger. I think the reason that was happening was, we already do all the seasoning in the formula itself, and the beef burger was appearing without seasoning, and so like it was pretty easy to match it. So there is a question about, do you continue to work on taste? I think we could continue to improve taste of some of our products for sure, but overall the game really comes down to continuing to use fewer and fewer ingredients, not because there's anything wrong with the ingredients we use, but just that's where trends are. And second is price. Like, how do we get this to be meaningfully less expensive than animal protein? And the analogies here are rich. I mean, like if you look at, Northeast cities, for example, at the end of the 1800s, there was a conversion, like almost like this, from horses to electric streetcars, and that was really driven. I mean, one, they didn't want the manure around, but that was a less of an issue. It was more of, it just became much cheaper to move people by electric trolley, and the horses disappeared from the cities within 15 years. And so we need to bring pricing down and our cost structure down, and then all of a sudden, I think you'll start to see the big fast food organizations all of a sudden get on board. If they're paying $12 a pound for beef, let's say in 27, if they can't correct the herd size, and we're much lower, you're going to start to hear the virtue arguments and things like that come from them because they're going to be making more money. So those are the things we're most focused on is ingredients, and then getting our cost structure down to be able to underprice animal protein.
Great, Shreya.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this talk. This is really, really helpful. I have 2 questions. One is, I know that the climate issue is very polarized in the US right now, and I'm wondering whether you regret in some way or wish that you hadn't presented Beyond as a climate-friendly product, or if that would have happened eventually anyway, just because of new suspicious-looking products or something like that. And I'm also wondering what your thoughts are on blended products. I know that a lot of lab companies are trying them right now, and I've even heard interest from my dining hall. And obviously you can think of arguments on either side of it, but I just like to know how you think about it.
Sure. On climate, the first note that I wrote, and it shows my age, is to a VC firm, was I titled the subject line "A Prius for Your Plate." So at the time, it wasn't Tesla or anything like that. They were around, but not well known. But at the time, it was a climate discussion. It's for the 2009 period, right? So that made sense to market around that. But today it doesn't at all, which is an absolute debacle because it is so powerful. And by the way, the climate numbers are well understated. I mean, the climate impact associated with livestock is enormous. It's not 18%. I mean, because you have to think about all the ecosystems that have been displaced, all these things. I mean, it's an enormous number, but it's going to be difficult to get that out of the UN and out of any body in the U.S. And so, do I regret it? I don't know. I've always felt like that health is the easiest way to get to the consumer, and we've tended to try to balance it with that. On the blended product, I would never do it. Just because I don't want to take another being's life, but if someone else wants to do it with our product, I think it makes sense, right? From a reduction in animal consumption, it would make sense. I just don't want to be part of it. They can do it with my product they want.
Thank you so much for your talk. It was a very thought-provoking. And also when you mentioned about the hybrid products, recently, how do you look at Impossible Foods going into because I heard that they are trying to get into the hybrid products, and that was one reason when I stopped buying their products, because I was this doesn't make sense as a company who started as a plant-based company and wanted to get into this. But my question, this was one thing, but the other question I have is I actually saw one of your videos where you mentioned courage and desperation is like two sides of the same coin. So like what was like I know like your desperation was like the environment and like animal welfare and all those things, but like was there a moment when you thought of, oh, I need to start Beyond Meat? Like was there like a click moment, or was it like a strategic thing that you were like, oh no, I wanted to do this, or was it like an overnight thing what you felt like, oh, I want to start, let's say, Beyond Meat and like start disrupting the food system?
Great question. I wish that it were, and I wish I could say it was. It was something different. I thought about it for a long, long time before I did it. And it was fear of not doing it that ultimately got me to take the risk to do it. Because I looked ahead and looked at my life, that's a long, hopefully, life that I could lead when I was young, thinking, okay, well, what I feel like maybe when I'm this age today, looking back, had I not done it. And I just said, that's going to be too painful, so I got to go do this. And really had to do something with my kids had just been born. And I was at we're going up the Jersey Turnpike, and we stopped to get something to eat. And I was like, holy shit, this is exactly the same as it was when I was a kid. The choices, and we had, at the time, we had pigs that we had rescued, farm sanctuary rescue, and we had them at our farm. And, the choices were ham and things like that. It's just, I cannot not do something about this. And I had a good job. I was in the fuel cell industry. I really enjoyed it. Fuel cells are terrific for climate and all that. But it was that type of just extreme discomfort that ultimately propelled me to do it. But I put it off for too long. And I think you guys being so young, don't put it off. Other thing is, by the time I did it, I had so much more to lose. Like, I had a home and a family and children I had to take care of. Go do something now where if you fail, you just fail. It doesn't really matter. Like, I've definitely failed in my 20s. Like, I've said this many times. But it's all learning, and it made me stronger and all that stuff. So go do it now, as soon as you can.
Thanks, Ethan, for the talk. My name is Galileo. I'm working towards similar end goals, but instead coming from the perspective of the cultivated space. What do you think the cultivated meat industry can take away from the sort of boom and bust of Beyond of other plant-based meats?
Sure.
What can we do to avoid a similar struggle once a cultivated product finally does reach mass markets?
Sure. Well, one, I'm friends with Uma, and I admire him a lot. Yesterday, I wanted to reach out to him. But I think it's a good thing, cultivated meat. I mean, I hope it's successful. And I looked at it before I started Beyond Meat, and I think it's very hard to see. For us, the number one issue that happened for us was you had such an ascension, and you had deals with McDonald's, Subway, Pepsi, Dunkin', KFC, Pizza Hut. So there's just enormous green light. And the main question from all these guys was, can you scale to produce this? And so we're like, yes, we can. And the financial markets were willing to give us the money, all these other things. So we built this enormous engine. And then the music stopped, right? And that was very hard to adjust to. And psychologically, it was difficult to see that happening as it was happening. You kept thinking it was something else, that it would transpire and be back on track. So all of those things made it difficult for the entire category, including Beyond, and particularly Beyond. And so it's that concept of, those milestones or proof points along the way. Don't get ahead of yourself. It is the safest thing to do as an entrepreneur and someone who wants to change the world. It's not natural for you to do that, right? But I think the one lesson that I would tell myself would be to do that, right? And so that would be my advice. But I'm also cheering for the category a lot. I mean, you guys need to be here, and cultivated meat is a important part of this puzzle. It's not going to come around anytime soon. Just the economics of it are difficult. The scaling's difficult. But Uma is a very smart man and a very principled person, and I think ultimately he'll get it.
All right. So I guess that's it. I know that someone else also asked about cultivated meat. And personally, I think that the solution might be one or another form or all of the above, most likely. But it's like petroleum and gas, right? It's not sustainable. It has to go, when it's going, I don't know, maybe 10 years, 50 years from now, but we know we are going to run out. We know it's not sustainable. It has to change. Doesn't matter how much people push back. And like I always say, every time that you try to fix the society, there's going to be pushback. Every form of injustice in the past, they did not end because everyone was on board. It ended because a small group of people, which is exactly you guys, decided to do the right thing. So I hope that you are inspired by Ethan. And as I always say, if you're inspired by him, just know that you should be doing even better than all of us combined, because you know about this topic a lot earlier than like me and probably even Ethan. So thank you again, Ethan. We love you. So thank you for everything. Thank you for everything. Thank you for everything that you've done for the world, for animals. I can't even believe the number of animals you've personally saved.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much, you guys. Look, and I love you guys, and this is an absolute battle we're fighting together. And I think write a note. I think about this conceptually. Write a note, put it in a bottle. 10 years from now, you're gonna open that bottle up. We will be much further along 10 years from now. Much further along than we are today. And so let's celebrate that together. Bring it into fruition, because it will happen, and I really do. I mean, TK and I talk about this a lot. We feel your community, we feel your support. We want to serve you. We don't want to disappoint you, and we want to make this thing come to the terrific outcome that we believe it can. So thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you again. All right. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Keep fighting.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you still have questions, feel free to email your questions to me. I can pass it on to Ethan. But if you ever feel like you don't have support, or you feel isolated, or you feel like there is just too much, always think about people like Ethan, right? Just imagine the crazy amount of pressure that these people have to be under all the time. They're getting pushback from literally the meat industry, from vegans, from everywhere. And the man still has to close the door, go home. I don't know, just put myself in his place, right? Just like you have all this immense pressure. Just know that if he can do it, so can you. All you need is that clarity of mind, that you just have to focus on what you can change today. And it's really a pleasure to be working with you, and hopefully we'll change things together, because there's nothing else that we can do. I mean, what else do we want to do with our lives? This is the best thing that we can do. So thanks for being here. And I'll see you on the other side. All right. Bye, guys.